Hey there guys, welcome to another video on object orientation in Python 3. And in this video I want to discuss the difference between instance and class attributes here. Now, if you're new to OOP in Python, these two terms might seem a bit alien at the moment, but I want to try and get to the point where at the end of the video you can look at an attribute and say, that's an instance one, or okay, this is a class attribute. And to do this, we're going to do a few examples using a really simple car class. So we have a car class here, which has its initialization method. Don't forget, these are called automatically whenever you create an instance of a class here. So this one takes in self, model, and price. Don't forget, self is always a reference back to the instance or the variable. So if I say A is equal to car, see how even though we can see self, model, price, in this little type hint, we just see model and price because it's implied that A is going to be passed in automatically as self. So it's basically like doing that to some degree, right? So if I said, let's say Astra, which is a deeply average car, and let's say this is 19,000 here. So what's happening is Astra 19,000, they're going to go in as model and price here. Those are then passed into this initialization method kind of section here, so lines 10 and 11. So bear in mind that self is pointing to A. So we're saying A has an attribute called model. That attribute is going to have a value of Astra. And of course, A's price attribute is going to have a value of 19,000 here. So what we can do is say, hey, Mr. A, what's your model? And A, what is your price? So we're asking the instance, what is your model and what is your price? And that's all an instance attribute is. So if I hit run here, there we go, Astra 19,000. And that's all an instance attribute is. It's a variable, it's a piece of data that lives with the instance. And they're unique to instances. So if I was to do A is this, and let's go ahead and do B, and let's think of another fairly average car. Let's say this is 20,000. If I do A's model and price, and then do B's model and price, the same deal, A has its own set of attributes, and so does B. So A and B, they're separate, think of them as separate instances. So these, even though they come from the same car class, the class is simply a template which describes how the object looks. A and B are the actual objects, right? And each object has its own set of attributes. So when I run this now, there we go, Astra 19,000, focus 20,000. So that's what an instance attribute is. It's a piece, so let's write it up here to remind us. It's a piece of data, let's say unique to an instance of a class. That's all it is. Okay? And key to think of this, think self. Self is key. So if I just put this in brackets here, whenever you see self, you always know we're talking about the instance. So let's say self is key there. So in this case, self.model, we're saying this instance is going to have this attribute and there's its value, model, right? So that's an instance attribute. Let's switch gears, I'm going to remove these, and talk about a class attribute now. To do this, we'll hit it a bit differently. So if you envision what this car class is, right? Like if I come along and just get rid of these, this is simply a template. The template has a method which says, here's how to set up an instance. But if we do this, if we say before this little method comes in, let's define a variable inside the class and say inStock is equal to 0. What we can do now is rather than doing like a.price and a.model, etc., we can say go to this car class and go .inStock. So if I do inStock here and select that, this is a class attribute. So this is a variable that belongs to the class here. So now if I run this, I get 0. So what we can do is we can actually leverage this inside our initialization method here. So suppose we define the template starts off its life as having this variable inStock set to 0. And what we could do is say, actually, every time an instance comes along and creates itself here, A or B, let's actually say go to the class, go to its class attribute, and just stick 1 at the end of that number. So now we're going to have in this case, if I bring back A A will set itself up with its model and its price. It will go to the class attribute in stock and put 1 at the end. So now if we run this, that's 1. Now let's bring the second instance, B, into play. And there we go, just like that. That's all the class attribute is. It's a piece of data that belongs to the class. Notice how there's no self happening here. There's no self because it's not linked to an instance, if that makes sense. So think about this, there's no self. And that's it really. That's the main difference between a instance attribute and a class attribute here. Let's go one step further and have a go at using an instance attribute inside of one of our methods here. So suppose, for example, I want to do a basic method called price increase here. I suppose because of inflation and everything horrible that's going on, we want to do a method to increase the price of every car. So let's suppose we do self.price plus equals 1,500 here. So now if I just use this on a single instance, if I go ahead and do a.price increase, don't forget the self is appearing here, which means we're talking about an instance. So of course, whenever we call a method like this, self links back to the variable, so self in this case, A. So we're saying A's price, go to it and stick on an additional 1,500. So if we go ahead and do A.price here, there we go, it's now gone up to 2,500 here, which is awfully depressing. So what we might want to do is say, well actually, imagine we want this value to be fixed. So rather than fixing it here, let's go ahead and make that value live as a class attribute. So let's do raise by instead, like this here. And rather than doing plus equals 1,500, we'll do car.raise by. I'll give that a value in just a second. Let's say we'll do, I don't know, 1,000 in here like that. So now what we're doing here is we're kind of playing with both. So this is talking to an instance. This is referring to the class. So we're saying, okay, now whenever an instance calls this, go to that instance and increase its price attribute and increase it by this value that lives inside the class. So this here. So now if we run this, we should see that go ahead and work. Yeah, 20,000, and we can still see this that variable. Let's go into that for a second, make it a bit clearer for us. So if we go ahead and try it on B, let's do a.price increase, and we'll do b.price increase. So now we're calling this instance method with 2 of our instances, A and B, and each time we call those methods, we're using this raise by attribute that lives inside the class here. So if I do A's.price, and let's go ahead and do B's price as well, and there we go, that should do it. And there we are. So cheers for watching, guys. I really enjoy making these videos. If you want to go ahead and like and subscribe, that would be fantastic. That would really make my day. And of course, any suggestions on things you want to see in OOP, feel free to drop me a message or leave a comment. I, of course, plan on releasing tons more of these in the future to try and teach OOP in a simple and conceivable way. Cheers, guys, and have a great day. Thanks.